what Incoterms are. Can I have a show of hands how many people are familiar with Incoterms? Okay. All right then, we're going to spend the majority of this on Incoterms. Incoterms are terms that were created in 1936 by the International Chamber of Commerce, and they were created to govern and assist in dictating who's going to be responsible for the charges and handling of a shipment and the risk and reward associated with that throughout the journey of a shipment on an international basis. I'm sure everybody in here has used the term FOB my dock. Anybody know those terms? Okay, right, so that's an Incoterm, and there are a whole bunch of them. Incoterms have evolved since 1936 and been updated throughout the years, with the most recent update being in 2010. And they do that because obviously times change, global economies change, and so they've tried to do that to adjust with the economies as well as to provide clarification. So when you sell your goods, you should be using an Incoterm, which is going to govern who's going to handle the shipping at what point and the risk and reward associated with that. And as Nick already alluded to, you know, do you want to take that risk? What's the value of that risk? And how does it relate to what you're going to do for your customer and what their responsibility is? This is an opportunity for you to capture all of that and make sure your client is okay with that. So today we're going to talk about the Incoterms and which ones are, you know, able to be used. They've reduced them from 13 to 11. They are, again, I will repeat this, this is for to use in your contract of sale. And it's very important to know that the Incoterms are related to shipping. They do not govern title transfer. They do not govern what happens if you breach your contract or your client breaches their contract. They do not govern how much you're going to pay if you decide to ship for your client. So for example, if you're dismantling a plant, you're running behind schedule and you said you were going to deliver it and you priced it based on a 60-day service, and now you have to escalate because you have Valdez and you have to go to a 30-day service, which costs you twice as much. If you don't detail in your proposal, you know, separately what shipping window or transit time that you're going to deliver within, Incoterms will not govern which one you have to use. So it's not a catch-all phrase. It doesn't get you out of jail by any stretch of the imagination. But you do need to know how to use them and also what they cover and what they don't cover. So I'm just going to start again. You want to use, first of all, it's very important in your Incoterms when you do declare to a client, I'm going to sell you FOB, Incoterms 2010. There are preceding Incoterms. Some of them have different definitions. 2010 specifically detail that it does not cover title transfer. So everybody knows you have a bill of sale, you put on it DDP, FOB, whatever the case is, and in the absence of declaring where the title transfers, people assume that the Incoterm is what governs where title transfers. That is not the case. Incoterm does not govern where title transfers in the contract of sale. It's extremely important to know this. Big companies like Siemens and GE are proficient in knowing this because they use it to their advantage to the extent that in a contract where they're delivering the goods and paying for the logistics, they'll actually say in the contract of sale that the title transfers as soon as they start to ship the goods, which allows them to potentially realize the revenue and invoice in full to their client. So it's very important to stipulate the difference between that and also to use the right term, like 2010 is the most recent everybody should use. Previous Incoterms were good, but definitely 2010 is what you want to use. So going on to specifying place or port, so there's 11 Incoterms. Some are able to be used for any mode of transportation, some are meant to be used for waterways. An Incoterm means nothing unless you put after it the named place. So you can't say FOB. It doesn't, FOB where? What does that mean? DAP, what does that mean? You need to specify the place and you need to use the right Incoterm for the right services that you're going to offer, if it's just ground or if it involves ocean freight, as the case may be, and they separate those terms quite specifically. We're not going to be able to go through all of them today, but we'll get, to look at what is most commonly in the industry used. So you have to name FOB Baltimore, DDP ABC Warehouse Mumbai. So you have to make sure Incoterm 2010, you're naming the Incoterm year you're using. You have to talk about which term, obviously, FOB, DDP, DAP, and you have to name your place. Those are three critical components in your Incoterm. And remember, it does not govern breach of contract on either party's part, nor does it govern the costs related with any of those services. You have from the top down to the bottom, you can use the top for any modes of transportation, rail, road, whatever the case may be. And we're not going to, again, go through all of them because of the time, but you'll see that you should use the appropriate ones for the appropriate modes of transportation and where you're going to. Okay, this is Incoterms in detail. We're not going to go through this, guys. There's just not enough time. What I wanted to highlight to you is you're sitting there, you're selling. What's the advantage? What do I want to do for the customer? You know, what kind of risk do I want? Do I have an appetite for it? So on the far left, you're going to see that X Works is the least amount of risk for the seller versus the far right, which is the maximum obligation of the seller. As you go through, you see where the responsibilities change from the buyer to the seller, where they grow, and you see that the terms change of who's responsible for what. On the left is the legend of who does what where, and on the top are all the Incoterms of who's responsible for what. There is a book available at the International Chamber of Commerce that you can buy. It's about this thick. I would recommend everybody go online and buy it. And each Incoterm is detailed about 6 pages. So it's important to understand that. If you're going to be shipping internationally, I think 75% of you raised your hand that you ship internationally, but very few were comfortable or knowledgeable about Incoterms. It's very important to understand that because it can certainly affect your liability. We're just going to go forward here. These are some of the terms that come with the Incoterms. We won't get into those. Today, the most commonly used Incoterms. X Works, you want the least amount of obligation. You've made your cargo ready. Ready does not even, in this case, include packaging, by the way, in the terms of X Works. It's the shipper, it's the buyer's responsibility. You call your buyer, say, it's on my dock, come package it, come pick it. Come do, come get it, it's yours, right? So you really have to think about that. X Works is still a term, but it's not commonly used because most of the time shippers are at least willing to package, load, and load the cargo. FOB, FAS, and FCA should also actually be in there. FCA is a new 2010 Incoterm, which is free carrier. That's going to replace your X Works and FOB My Dock. So you're going to say FCA, ABC, FCA, A&A Machinery. That means that the seller, A&A Machinery, is responsible to load the cargo to the means of conveyance presented to them by the buyer. So it can be if you're GE who has a rail spur, if they can say FCA, GE, and it can be loaded on the rail and that meets the terms, or it could be truck, or whatever the case may be. You can also use FCA for waterway terms to deliver to a port as well. Again, it's important. X Works, FOB is free on board at a port. FAS is free alongside ship. You, the seller, are responsible to deliver the cargo alongside the vessel. CIF is cost insurance and freight. So that's usually used when you're shipping to a destination, a port. So you might say CIF Mumbai, CIF Sao Paulo, whatever the case may be. So again, you need to know what you're going to provide and what services and range, and these will govern those services from A to Z for you. DDP, delivered, duty, paid. Maximum amount of obligation. You want to make the sale, your client is antsy about, don't know how to get it into the country. Know your risk. My biggest advice today. Know your risk and know your responsibility. There is certainly, we offer to our clients that you want to be in control of your destiny. If your destiny includes getting paid and having a return client, then you want to look at offering the services. But know what you're offering. So delivered duty paid means you pay for the whole kit and caboodle, including destination, duties and taxes. Approach with caution this term. I recommend. You're going to Brazil with used machinery. We've moved entire plants for GE. The time to get permits to get machines into Brazil, if you take that on your shoulders, it's an extreme amount of risk. Okay, so know that. DDP is maximum amount of obligation on the seller. You can probably talk your client into, if you need to deliver the freight, DAP or DDU, but DAP is the new term now in 2010, which somewhat replaces DDU, delivered at place. So that means delivered at place, that's like a door if you're going inland in Brazil to a client's door. And they would do the customs duties. We're going to move on to a topic, also I'm sure near and dear. How do you know whether or not you should offer the freight to your clients? How do you know whether or not you should include it? Once you've understood your Incoterms, and there's absolutely no harm in calling any one of us, or presumably it's Convoy, but your logistics provider, and saying, hey guys, I want to ship this, I want to do this portion of the freight, what term should I use, right? That's the thing, and honing in on that to know that. The big question is, what's your appetite for risk? Where can you make extra money? How, is this going to help you make the sale to your client? How many times have you gravitated through a sale from as is, where is, to gravitating to, okay, Mr. Client, I'll deliver it for you in order to make the sale, right? That happens because you have people in India, Brazil, China, that don't necessarily know the lay of the land in North America for exporting cargo, and it helps you make the sale. There is no doubt that anybody who takes on the responsibility of doing the logistics in-house as an exporter yourself, there's got to be some risk and reward. I've never seen in my career where a shipper who agrees to deliver their cargo overseas does not have some commercial benefit to that risk that they're assuming, right? Again, also, Nick asked me to talk on insurance. Too big a topic to talk today, and I'm not an insurance person, but the other thing I want to say to everybody is make sure that you address your insurance with your clients. Even if you're doing insurance to the destination, it doesn't necessarily preclude that you are going to offer them marine insurance. Your client can also get the marine insurance for themselves. Number one, don't double insure, because you're actually not supposed to do that. Number two, know your insurance. If you want to offer the insurance, get an insurance premium for the scope of work you're doing for your client. If it's just to the port, that's what you want to do. If it's door to door, you want insurance to govern that total scope. If you have issues and concerns, it's out of gauge cargo, get a marine surveyor. All of those services can be procured for your through your logistics provider, and they can also talk with you and help you work through some of that to understand what the needs are. If you're working with bigger companies and organizations, multinationals like the Siemens and GEs of the world, they typically have their own insurance, so you just want to make sure that you're signed off. Corporately, I'm sure everybody has their own LLE and O insurance as well, which protects you from a liability standpoint. Freight insurance is completely separate. So if you don't get it, you don't have it. You need to know that for sure. So in terms of the benefits of the seller handling logistics, you have control over the shipment. How many times have you sold something as is, where is, and it sits there for 6 months because your client doesn't come and get it? Or it sits at a port that you delivered it to and they haven't nominated their freight forwarder and you're still not able to get your money. Obviously the transaction of the funds is going to typically be tied in some way, shape, or form to the physical delivery of the cargo. But if you can't drive that process, you have no control over it. So know that when you go into your sale. And if you're going to drive that process, again, you want to assess the amount of appetite of risk and reward you have for that. But we often get involved in, we're kind of the middle guy where you have a buyer and a seller, and the client wants X and the sellers agreed to Y. And so there's always this maneuvering back and forth to provide what is required and what was agreed to in the contract. So again, it's about understanding if you want to be able to sell to your client and have the opportunity to deliver. How many people sell delivered right now? And we can look at these summaries here. Again, evaluate your risk and reward in providing logistics services in your sales cycle. There's always a benefit, and there certainly is a commercial opportunity for advantages for you.